All right, bike's ready to go. Let's see. We're clear. 6:44. Let's get off. Welcome to Freeway Bible Study. So, my name is Kurt Bell, and we're going to cover a single chapter of the Bible today. This is an activity that I do every day, Monday through Friday, to make myself familiar with the Bible, which is, a very important collection of documents, informative of history and culture. And I want to be familiar with these documents, so that I can understand the foundational elements of my own Western culture, and also the mindset of my friends and family members and acquaintances who are adherents of the Christian faith. I am not a Christian. I'm not of any religion, so I would be one of those nuns, not with a habit, but N-O-N-E that you'd put on the checkbox. And I have to do this funky thing on the to get here, because on the on-ramp here, because I can't, my motorcycle won't get picked up by the sensor, so that's what I'm doing right there. So anyway, so I try to do this with an open mind, and now I've got a motorcycle in the carpool lane, so I can go right through this red. There we go, and we are on our way. Freeway Bible Study begins in earnest. So I try to do this with an open mind. I also try to do it with a critical mind. So trying to exercise both activities simultaneously. So today we're on Genesis 3. Oh, and by the way, I do this in a very straightforward manner. I start at the front of the Bible and work my way right to the back, and then start the whole process over. And my goal is to record a video for every chapter of the Bible along the way. So what I do is I read it first, sometimes more than once, sometimes from different editions, and then comment on it. And I try to do this without notes, just relying on my memory. So I may miss a lot. It may not be perfect. So it's imagine you just, kind of things you want to say along the road on the freeway. So let's get started with Genesis 3. Now, at Genesis 3, we're very early in the story, and I was thinking about this, and it's a little bit like, if I want to address it, I'm a little nervous about talking about this, because this is the big one, or one of them. I mean, this is it. This is original sin. This is the fall. There's so much probably that I could try to say on this. So I imagine it's kind of like, was it Vivaldi? It starts off that one song. Maybe, I don't know my composers. The dun 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 dun. It starts off with a really big, opening, and then dies down after that. That's kind of what the Bible is like in a way. At this point with Genesis 3. I mean, it's this huge event with the fall of Adam and Eve, and after that, then that basically lays the groundwork for everything to come. Well, not everything to come, really. I mean, it explains a lot in terms of why we suffer, but it isn't until the New Testament that then which is the answer to all of that. So you have to go along. So we'll set the stage for a predicament that won't be addressed for many books and many centuries later. So I was trying to think, how should I do this? Should I try to recount the chapter, summarize the chapter from memory, and then go back and comment it, or begin summarizing it and then interject with commentary? And I've selected the latter, because I think if I try to just summarize it all in one fell swoop, when I'm done I won't have anything to say, because my style seems to be one of interjection, where I kind of interrupt myself to talk about things along the way, and especially since I have no notes. I would love to plaster some notes here on the windscreen, but something tells me that this will be more fun and challenging if I don't, and safe. Not to mention safer. Yes, officer. Yeah, those are crib notes. Yes, they are indeed on the windshield. Why? Good question. Okay, so let's begin. So chapter 3 opens, let's think about Genesis 1 and 2. In Genesis 1, the universe was created. In Genesis 2, man and his wife, I think that's how we should refer to her, because that's the way God refers to her. Eve seems to be it's not man and woman, it's man and his wife. That's a heavy laden implication right there. So man and his wife are created twice in different ways. And now, and the Garden of Eden was placed in the Garden of Eden. Now, in Genesis 3, things are going along pretty good. And this is where I get nervous. I can feel this flush rising at me. It's like, oh, I'm wading into the waters, and I don't know that I'm up to the task. And I'm sure that believers will kind of be. I'm imagining that this whole exercise is a bit of a bemusing puzzle. They're probably thinking, if they're watching this video, kind of with a twisted grimace on their face. It's probably good that an atheist is reading the Bible. I mean, that's what believers typically tell us to do. Just read the Bible. You'll find the answers. But at the same time, there's probably something about the way I'm doing this that doesn't feel right. It would probably be better just to read it with an open heart. Don't read it looking for the problems. And I would like to tell them that when you ask a non-believer to read the Bible, part of the reason we're non-believers is that the way that we operate in the world is critically. So we're going to, what I'm doing is probably very similar to what other non-believers would do. We're looking for fault, and we do that with other things too. We'll do that with novels that we read and textbooks, and we probably do that when we're listening to just discussions, arguments, whatever. It's just the way we operate. So I hope you understand that I don't know that I could read the Bible the way that in the spirit that I'm being that some might request me to do so, which is to settle down and just try to read it, trying to get myself into it and hear the voice of the Lord. Hey, I don't know that I don't know that I can't do that. I have to approach it by virtue of my nature. Hold on, I gotta scratch my lips. So, I'm nervous though because this is a heavy one. Like I said, let's go. And I gotta watch the time. So it opens with in Genesis 3. We've got the Garden of Eden, and it opens straight away with the serpent, the snake talking to Eve. And then I don't think the snake is quite what we think it is. It may have legs. And right off the bat, I'm like, wait a minute. The snake's talking. So yeah, Now, it's not like the Bible doesn't have talking animals. I mean, a little later we're going to meet Balaam and his talking ass, and I don't mean his butt. I mean, the thing he was riding on. Which is interesting. So talking animals seem to be all okay. And what's actually I just realized. I was thinking to myself before. Okay, it's talking snake. Okay, maybe after the fall, that's when the animals couldn't talk anymore. But Balaam's ass certainly could talk. But maybe that was a one-off. I don't know. Anyway, so the snake's talking to Eve and kind of enticing her, saying, "Hey, can't you? Did God say you can't eat the fruit of the trees?" And Eve said, "No. We can eat of the trees. We just can't eat of the tree in the center of the garden." Now it's interesting because I actually have two versions of the Bible: the King James edition and the New International version, and so it's interesting to read both and hear the differences. And I think it was one, or maybe it was both, that referred to a singular tree. Now there's two trees that God warned Adam and Eve to not have anything to do with. That was the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The one would grant more immortality, the other would grant an understanding of right and wrong. But Eve simply said we can't touch of the one tree. I think God mentions that later. And the serpent comes back and says, "Oh, no." And Eve says, "Lest we die." And the serpent says, turns out rightly so. It turns out the serpent was telling the truth. "Oh, no, you're not going to die. You'll just be like gods." And I think I'm maybe screwing it up. I think God actually says so himself. He actually admonishes them, do not eat of the tree of these. He said specifically, do not eat of this one tree, lest you be like us. And he uses that plural again. And I think he used the plural in the King James and the singular in the New International. But lest you be like us. So there's that like, that's like the second or third time in 3 chapters that God's been referred to as some plurality. You know, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, who knows? But like us. So lest you be like us. And the serpent says, no, you won't die. You'll just be like gods. You'll know good and evil. So go ahead, have a bite. So Eve does, and it's interesting to know that I think Adam is very close at hand, because she in very short order she hands the thing to the apple or whatever it is to Adam, who takes a bite also, because he's right there. He says, and it says in both International Version and King James that Adam is with her. So was Adam not listening to what the snake was saying? I guess not. Because it's clear, God makes very clear that it's Adam's job to husband, in the truest sense of that word, his wife, and he was delinquent in that duty, and his fall really was in listening to her, assuming that he understood that particular fruit came from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So immediately they're like, whoa, look at that, what's this? You know, you're naked, I'm naked, let's make some fig leaves and hide, because here comes God. God's walking through the garden. Love that image, beautiful image of God walking bodily through the garden, you know, enjoying the cool of the day. And God's like, Adam, where are you? You know, and it's interesting again to note how there's this relationship between God and Adam. Eve seems to be a peripheral figure in all of this. Again, Eve is the wife. It's not man and woman. It's man and wife. And God specifically addresses Adam, with the exception of the punishment that will come for Eve, and what he specifically addresses her. And now God. And I want to go back and make a point that was on my mind, because I'll forget about it otherwise. This whole setting and scene of the garden, and the perfect garden. It struck me, as did yesterday's discussion of Genesis 1 and 2. It struck me of the human origins, namely. In Genesis 1 and 2, the difference in the versioning of the story, you know, with the two creations. I gave the example of my friends Eric and John, who I watched them create a religion, and the process of doing that, and the errors that humans are apt to make that were revealed in that process. Likewise, the story of the Garden of Eden. Now, imagine way back we're trying to explain everything, and you've got this problem of suffering in the world. And I'm trying to picture myself, whoever the authors were. Hey, there's people. Whoever the authors were of the garden, which the New International Version tells me are strictly anonymous. We don't know who they are. You know, a lot of it's attributed to Moses, but that's just hearsay. Oh, I had a car. That was my first car ever. It was a car just like that. Oh, I missed that thing. I used to date my wife in that. Had that for a long time. A Camaro Rally Sport RS. So anyway, you know, imagine, you know, 2000, you know, 1500 BC, I don't know, whatever it is, 1000 BC, you know, you got the problem of life. You know, you believe in God, but you're like, man, why is it, why do we suffer? Why is everybody suffering so bad? Why is life so like? Why do we die? Why is everything so hard? And, you know, I watched Eric and John do this. They would present themselves with a challenge and a kind of, and then ask themselves, what would be a good answer to that? If we're gonna make up kind of an answer, because they were deliberately making up a religion. Let's make up an answer. They would come up with that, and they would say, you know, the answer to the creation of the universe was this gird thing that created the universe, and then the gird's imagination of something greater than itself instantiated God from nothing. So likewise, imagine 1000 BC, the anonymous writers of Genesis, or writer of Genesis, I don't know, sitting around thinking, you know, the world really sucks. You know, wouldn't it have been great if it could be like a paradise where we didn't have to till the soil, and the beasts were, you know, calm. Sure, and they could talk, so we always had someone to chat with, and snakes could walk, and you could just reach up and grab a fruit from the garden. And life would be great. Oh, just and you know, and women were made from men and made as our helpmeets, and we. Yeah, okay, clearly some dudes wrote this. So, okay, and then they say, but why is it not like that? Why clearly the world isn't like that? Well, something must have happened, right? Well, there's got to be something in the midst of all that screwed everything up. Okay, well, how about a tree with a special fruit that, you know, would soil the whole game? Yeah, that's a great idea. Oh, okay, yeah, and God tells you don't know any of that, but of course they do, and that's why we're left where we are. Oh, it's a great story, you know. If there's a couple of dudes, you know, Eric and Johns of the 1000 BC sitting around, you know, after drinking a little mead or something like that, they come up with that. Yeah, that's great, and they start telling their friends and family. Oh, and I've got something to say to that. That GERD thing that they did, we actually used that for a sociology experiment we're doing, and it took off. People actually started coming to us, and they wanted to have meetings of the GERD. This little fake religion we created, without even trying, grew legs. And I actually remember going back and starting to see some of the flyers that we made for this sociology experiment, and they were posted up in the dorms. So I mean, it doesn't take much for. I could imagine this John and Eric of the first 1000 year BC starting to tell a couple friends, and they're saying, yeah, you guys, you hear about that Eden thing and the apple and the snake, and you're off and running. So anyway, some more evidence, perhaps, of human origin, human creativity. So then, you know, then now God shows up. And he's like, hey. Well, first of all, he's like looking for them. I mean, clearly he should know where they are. But you know, he's kind of like, you know, slumming, you know, pretending like he's just a regular Joe. And he says, it's interesting, he says, who told you? He clearly tells something's up. He says, and Adam says, we were hiding because we still heard you coming, and we were naked. We were ashamed of our nakedness. And God says, who told you you're naked? Now I'm like, wait a minute, who else is there that can possibly tell them? Did the snake? Oh, okay, I think we just answered the question. If the animals could talk, then I'm sure an opossum could walk by and say, hey, cover that up, you know, go get a room, you two. Or was it one of these other gods? Well, clearly God knew, and it was what they'd done, and the game was up. And what's interesting at that point, what unfolds now is almost comedic series of throwing one another under the bus. You know, the first thing Adam does is blame Eve. You know, no, I didn't do it. You know, the woman, you know, suggested I eat the fruit, and then the next thing Eve does is blame it on the snake. You know, no, the serpent beguiled me. It wasn't me. Now it stops there, and then Yahweh gets out his poetry pen. I mean, if you actually read it in the New International Version, it actually reads like poetry. It changes from prose to actually almost a poetic form. It's quite beautiful and goes into his thing. But what I was wondering was, it's a shame that the snake didn't, man up isn't the term, grow a backbone. Wait a minute, they're all backbone. The snake should have said, wait a minute, no, because they're just, passing the buck down the line from Adam to Eve to the serpent. The serpent should have said, hey, wait a minute, God, you're the one that set this up. I mean, it was your idea to create this garden, and then these mortals that have no conception of good and evil, which I believe ostensibly would indicate they don't know right from wrong. They're like children in that way. And then put amongst that garden a tantalizing, appetizing, tempting fruit, and then tell them that they're not to eat it on punishment of death. Now they don't understand right from wrong. They don't know good from evil. And if you say that good and evil and right and wrong are different, then that's something separate. But I would imagine that those would be part and parcel of the same thing. So God, I mean, if anyone's responsible for this, you are, and by the way, you would have known all along what they would have done. You designed them with the weakness and the failing to do so. I mean, this is, of course, considered the first exercise of free will, which is a very curious one, because we say that God can't reveal himself to us, but for fear that we will not be able to exercise our free will. Here's a clear case of Adam and Eve clearly knowing that God exists. I mean, he's walking amongst them, and yet they exercised their free will to violate his commandment, so to speak, to not eat the fruit. Back on that thing about the fruit thing. So imagine that as a father, as I am, that I take my toddler Emily, my little daughter, and I put her in a room. I put her in a room with a bunch of toys, or maybe a bunch of fruit, goodies, snacks, goldfish crackers, and I put a big old rat trap, you know, not a mouse trap, but a rat trap, that big giant thing with a Herculean snapper thing that comes across. And then I put her a real delicious piece of grape right there in the middle of that mouse trap. And Emily loves grapes back then. And she's a toddler, so she doesn't know right from wrong. She doesn't understand consequences, that kind of stuff. And I step away from the room. You know, I've got one of those little kitty gates in the entrance so she can't get out. And I say, okay, I'm going to step away for a little bit. Emily, go ahead and eat anything you want, have a great time, but don't eat the grape from this rat trap in the middle of the room, or you'll die. Well, she's not going to die, but it's the same thing. God wasn't telling the truth when he said they were going to die, unless he meant figuratively die in the spiritual sense, which he should have said so. But okay, so then I step away, and you know, of course, you know that Emily is eventually going to find that grape, and she's going to break her finger when that rat trap closes upon her finger, and you know, cry out in pain, and I'm going to come back. Oh, what did you do? And she's hiding her finger behind her back, you know. And I'm like, you did? Who told you could eat the grape from the rat trap? And she said, but I broke my finger hurts. It's like, oh, okay, that's it. And I pick her up by the, you know, bodily, and I'm getting ahead of myself in the story, and I take her out to the backyard, which is, you know, dry and dusty and dog turds everywhere, and I toss her out there and say, here, you stay out there. You know, I curse you to make your ends meet for the rest of your life out in there in the backyard. Now, if the neighbor called Child Protective Services and they came over, and I just related as the father, I related that story, Emily would be quickly in the arms of a social worker on her way to foster care, and I would probably be on my way to jail. So if the snake had simply passed the buck one further and told that story, of course God would have zapped it into a worm, so you can't really do that. So the snake doesn't say anything, and God then goes into poet mode, and you know, and says, you know, and I'll see if I can try to do my godly voice without being blasphemous. I mean, I'm just kind of a silly guy, but you know, first he gives it to the snake. He says, you are cursed to crawl on your belly and eat the dust of the earth. Your kind and the kind of the woman will be enmity. And I'm sure the snake's like turning to Eve, going, what's enmity mean? And her kind will hit your head and you will bite her ankle. And then she goes on to Eve and says, you, Eve, for your trespass on my righteous demand, you will be suffer manifold suffering in childbirth for the rest of your days. And this is interesting, this is really interesting. He says, your desire will be the best interest of your husband. I'm not saying it just the way he said it, but it's basically along those lines. You will desire, your interest will be the desire of your husband, and you will basically, you know, follow his lead for the rest of your life. Now, if that's interesting, if you think about that, the woman's desire will be her husband's interest. If that was really true, that means that the woman's desire, her interest, is what her husband wants. If that was the case, you'd think that houses would have full of outrageously cool man caves, and there would be no going to the shopping mall. I mean, women would basically, their thoughts would be, what's my man want today? You know, maybe it's a back rub and a breakfast, and then we're going to head on over to the monster truck rally. So maybe I'm reading too much into that one. But clearly, part of her punishment is to be subject to her husband. And a lot of denominations of the Christian faith do indeed abide that. And I got to get over one. Here we go. Hold on. Next is, so now it comes to the man and says, you know, you Adam, you know, your days of leisure are over. It's time for you to hit the fields, and it's kind of strange imagery of, you know, you're going to plow the fields for your livelihood from the fields that we were created from. And they send them both off outside east of Eden. Out they go. God sets up a bunch of cherubs cherubim, the little flying babies, to usher them out, and then there sets up a flaming sword that turns all over the direction to keep everybody out, kind of indicating that Eden's still out there. Now, I saw a documentary that actually went back to kind of rebuilt where Eden would be, and it wasn't anything like that. So clearly, so maybe that's an indication that this was all just a metaphor. Lots and lots. So let's kind of wrap this up then. Lots and lots indicate that this is all just a metaphor, of course. And if it is a metaphor, and if that's the answer that comes, then we've got to watch it. That's a slippery slope. If we answer that the Genesis story in general, in particular Genesis 3 in the fall, is a metaphor for something else, and it didn't really happen, then there is no original sin. And that pulls the rug out from the whole apparatus that's to follow in the New Testament. And while we're on the subject, maybe I should save this thought, and I will save this thought for months from now when we get onto the New Testament. But what about original sin? What about this hereditary fall, holding our children, grandchildren, for every generation henceforth accountable for the trespass and sins of the first man and first woman? Where's the justice in that? If free will is indeed a valued thing, then we don't seem to be granting. We're not starting off with. We're not all starting off on equal footing. We're all basically but that kind of makes sense though, right? I mean, if the whole thing was, for example, like some games that we can play. I'm not a video gamer, but I've played a few. When you start off with kind of a utopia that for something happens, aliens arrive, a bomb goes off, an asteroid strikes, it quickly becomes a dystopia, and that dystopia then becomes the challenging setting by which the hero and heroine have to resolve things and come out the other side. If that's the case, then that makes perfect sense. Wow, could we have, at risk of overusing the word, could we have the original game, a video game archetype in the fall? Oh, there's the Prado Dam and the fog, and I'm definitely trespassing into territory I need to stop because I have another video I want to do. So anyway, that's it. I think I'll stop there. Hopefully I did a worthwhile job. I feel like there's a lot more to it, and of course I'm amply unqualified to do this. Not having any credentials as a pastor or anything like that else. But it's fun to do, and I look forward to comments. I probably won't respond to comments, largely because I don't want to get into flame wars. So I think it's fair that I make my point. You can make your point in comments if you like, but to avoid, I don't think it's a good use of time having the flame wars back and forth, and it's a challenge to you, if you want to make a comment, to succinctly write your comment in such a way that it can be reflected upon without the need to engage in lengthy back and forth. I don't hold this standard to just this series of videos. That's pretty much how I've always operated on YouTube. If you followed my videos elsewhere, I'm not much of one to be responding much to comments, because like I said, I try to give my clearest, almost like we each get one chance. And you're going to get a couple of minutes to stand, and you can write as long as a comment as you want. But we each get one chance, and then that's it. And then we just move on to the next day's video, the next topic. So I hope that's fair. Oh my gosh, a beautiful sunrise. So I'm going to sign off. Thank you for joining me on another Freeway Bible study. Tomorrow, Genesis 4. What lies next for our hero? Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.